As production music composers, we don't really think of ourselves as artists who need to rely on name recognition to attract a giant following on the internet. I mean, because our music lives in libraries, who wrote specifically which cue doesn't often even matter to the music supervisor or the editor. So that having been said, do we really need to focus on having a web presence? How much attention should we even give to having a website or an Instagram, a Twitter, or a TikTok? So to help me answer this, I've invited back to the podcast Mrs. 52 Cues, Shannon Croft, who in addition to being an accomplished music director, instrumentalist, and educator, also owns her own graphic design studio focused on branding and marketing strategies. Plus, we take a listen to a bluesy Southern rock cue written by a member of the 52 Cues community on this week's episode of the 52 Cues podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by you, a member of the 52 Cues community, and this week we're going to take a listen to Keep On Keepin' On, which is a bluesy Southern rock cue written by Ashby, so be sure to stick around for that. If this is your first time here, welcome aboard. I'm so glad to have you with us. I know you have a ton of options out there, whether you're listening to this as an audio podcast or watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for spending part of your day here with me. I have to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep the podcast, the channel, and everything here going. See, we are 100% community supported, so you're not going to be bombarded with ads for meal plans or mattresses. But if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52 Cues and also unlock perks like live streams and workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description or stick around because we're going to be talking a lot more about that a little bit later in today's episode. Do we need a web presence? We're production music composers. We inherently live in the background. So do we have to have a website and an Instagram and a TikTok and a Twitter? And do we need to really push ourselves in the same way that an artist would? Well, to help me answer this, I've invited back to the podcast Shannon Croft, my absolute better half, who does all of the marketing for 52 Cues. He did the logos and the t-shirts and the posters and all of that stuff. And she is no stranger to online marketing, design, branding, and we talk about how we as production music composers have to think a little bit differently than if we were promoting ourselves as artists. So without further ado, here is my recent conversation with Shannon Croft. I am so happy to be joined once again by my absolute better half, and in the same room, or not in the same room, in a different room, in the same house.
Right.
Mrs. 52 Cues herself, Shannon Croft. Welcome back to the 52 Cues podcast.
Thank you, Dave. It's always a pleasure to be here because you're so much fun.
Oh,
the end.
You kind of have to say that. I mean,
well, you know,
and we've been together 30 years, and it will be actually, if we do the math, it's 30 years next week.
Wow.
Since our first
Not
date.
married since the first
Not
date.
married.
We're the odd people
date.
who, we have our wedding anniversary, but really it was that first date where magic happened. So that's actually
right.
the anniversary
That's right.
that we celebrate because it was like, hi, I like you. I like you too. Let's spend our lives together. Okay, cool.
Exactly. That is not unlike it. And
not
to be
that
able
I would
to
advise anyone that was our age to do that these days.
No, heck no. I look at like 20-year-olds now and I'm like, no, you're not ready to make a 30-year commitment. But as always, it's so great to have you back on the podcast. And you are, one of the smartest people I know, and you are multi-talented. And we've had you talking on about music history before. You've given a workshop on music theory. And so I wanted to bring you once again to talk about another one of your skill sets, which is marketing, web presence, internet strategies, graphic design, all of that stuff, because the question is, and the fundamental thesis question here is, do we as production music composers need to have a website? But before we get into that, I'm just teasing the question. Tell our audience what's the connective tissue between music director, historian, music theory, and graphic design? Because there are quite a lot of musicians who get into graphic design and visual arts. But what's the connection there?
Well, I think part of it is, sometimes in music you have people who sight read greatly, and people who play by ear greatly. I was a sight reader. I'm visually oriented to begin with. So you put something in front of me, I can read it. It's cool, no problem. And so that eventually, as I was developing curriculum for Full Sail University and some other places, I noticed that I didn't want to just put words on the page. I wanted to illustrate it as well. And so that began to just translate into this sort of just kind of fed into that visual talent. And I really enjoy communicating things creatively. So it just sort of happened. I don't have any formal training, but I think I'm pretty good at it.
Well, I also saw the connection happening when, for being a music director at a church, and you're often the one setting up like ProPresenter and the slides, and, pastor needs an announcement slide for an upcoming workshop or something.
Here's your sermon slides at Saturday night at 8:00. Yeah. So there was some measure of necessity in that. Nobody else is going to do it. So here I am.
And so what are your design tools of choice these days?
Man, there are more and more design tools coming out because I've been doing it for a while. I'm in the Adobe Creative Suite. I love Illustrator. I'm not so much of a Photoshop girl because I'm more graphic design than like art design. And there's a whole big school of thought on the ways that those diverge. So I'm definitely up into the Adobe Suite. I've done a lot of stuff in InDesign. I've typeset books galore. So yeah, and there's other tools that are kind of coming up, and you're starting to see more. For instance, on stock photography sites, you'll see, or stock graphics, you'll see for Illustrator, for Photoshop, for for this and that, and all the other ones that are starting to come up a little bit. So Adobe's doing really great things. I just attended their yearly conference, Max conference, and online. And they're really doing some interesting things with automation and AI, which we talked about last time I was on the podcast. So visual AI and just being able to shortcut some of those tedious things that we get into, which is like, if you've looked online lately, you can find these great little programs that will take the background off a picture in like 2 seconds. I mean, it's crazy. And that's something you used to have to spend a lot of time in Photoshop to make it look pretty good. So thank God that some of that grunt work is being taken care of.
You ain't lying. I mean, every thumbnail that you see on this channel uses one of those tools. It's a website called removebg.com.
Yes. And it's funny because it really developed more on the web first. And then you saw it showing up in sort of amateur design tools like Canva and even Adobe Express. And now it's finally made its way back into the desktop apps where like, okay, now you can push a button and it'll do what these websites have been doing for a while.
Yeah. And I use Photoshop. I'm more of a Photoshop person than an Illustrator, which is funny because that's kind of switched up.
Right.
Because as I am pushing further into music, I'm pushing further away from graphic design and web design, which I did 20 years ago. And so now it's interesting how our career paths are dovetailed and intertwined and pretzeled around each other.
One of the funniest moments was you used to talk to me about, redirecting and I could not grasp like, well, if this website is hosted over here, but the domain comes from over here, how do you do? And then I just couldn't get it. My mind doesn't work that way, I guess. But then I was in it for a while and I started saying gook to you and you were like, well, you surpassed me.
That's
so
right.
That was kind of fun.
Same way in like Illustrator and using all of those tools. I'm like,
Oh,
and
yeah.
you left me. I can't help. Please don't come at me if you have any issues because I no longer have the skill set. But another skill set that you bring to the table, which is using online marketing, specifically websites, and specifically using one web tool. I'm trying not to say it, so I want to let you say it. But you have one web platform that you really focus on. Isn't that right?
That is right. I've used WordPress and I've used a little bit of a couple of others, and there's Wix out there and all of that. And there's this funny line that says Squarespace sponsors everything. They do, and I use them. I use Squarespace for my hosting because, number one, it's all integrated into the platform. There are plugins, and not really even plugins. There's code injections that you can make to make it do something cool that it doesn't do out of the box. But for the most part, the actual inner workings of the site are all there with Squarespace. So it's not like WordPress where you have to do bringing all these plugins in and then you have to update them. And if one doesn't update right, it breaks the site. Right, Dave? That's happened to you.
Oh, yep.
And so it's a little bit more creative. It's kind of the Mac versus PC conversation from all those years ago in the commercial.
It really is. Yep.
Squarespace is kind of the Mac. It's the user friendly. It's got a nice graphic user interface, and it's not quite so heavy.
Malleable.
Yeah, you can do a lot with it. Yeah.
Yeah, I have found that WordPress, you have to have like all of the plugins and the add-ons and all of that stuff to make it do some really impressive things, some very impressive things.
Yes.
But because WordPress is the most popular web-based platform, it is also the largest target for malware and bots and spam. And so they come out with updates all the time. And getting your site hacked, getting your site taken down, and all of that, and one update will break all of your plugins, and now your website goes down. And so it's just, going to Squarespace and being on Squarespace is more limited. I can't do as much, even though that line is getting, those lines are diverging.
Right. Squarespace recently introduced a fluid engine, which I got to be in on the beta of because I'm a Squarespace Circle member, which means nothing really other than I've been doing this a while. And so I was able to be in on the Fluid Engine beta. And it's basically, rather than the block style of design that you get in a lot of these websites, it's a completely open designing platform where you can, like you would in Illustrator or Photoshop, you can move things around where you want them to be and all that type of thing. So that's definitely been a very cool rollout for them. Excuse me.
But rarely does something break Squarespace. I mean, there are times it goes down, but it's massively stable, unlike WordPress where a plugin will break the whole site.
Something that goes down on Squarespace, I've never seen just the site go down, ever. There might be an issue with the scheduling module or the commerce module or something, but they have crazy uptime. And I'm subscribed to the tech issues blast. So I get a text every time there's a problem, and I get a text maybe once or twice a week. And it's always some very small thing. It's never that, oh my God, the entire site went down.
Yeah, rarely does the site just crash.
Right. And I would say that those errors are across the board. It's not just my website. They're bigger issues. I've never had any trouble with my site.
Right.
In itself.
Right. And it's not perfect, and it is limited in the same way that Macs are limited. It's closed architecture is its strength, not its liability, as long as you know that's what you're getting, right?
Right.
If just like I'm not going to crack open my new Mac Studio and hope that I can upgrade the motherboard, you're just not going to be able to do that. The same kind of thing goes with Squarespace.
And Squarespace kind of markets itself as, there goes the mic again, kind of markets itself as, it kind of goes in two directions. It is trying to market itself to the consumer base as Here's this do-it-yourself, out-of-the-box, which is somewhat true. You can get going. But one of our composers at 52Qs reached out to me. He's like, I've got this Squarespace site, and it's just meh. And I was like, oh, okay, no problem. And I whooshed it up and put my magic on it. And Alan really wants in. I don't know if you can hear my cat.
That's fine. It's authentic.
Put the magic on it. And it's so, yes, it can be used by sort of lay people, but it's also really robust for designers and developers to be able to do a lot of cool things on the back end that not everybody's going to know how to do. So this isn't really an ad for Squarespace. I swear I don't make any commissions or anything. I'm not a high traffic advertising agency that has enough traffic to make commissions off of their stuff or anything. Sorry.
Now he's getting in front of the camera. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so
all right.
Cat.
That is life with cats. So, which leads me back to the point of this episode.
Yes.
As production music composers, meaning we're pitching our music to libraries and to catalogs. Do you think we need a website?
Yeah, because, and there's kind of a wide range of thoughts on this. I worked with a client one time who was wanting to expand his physical product business into a marketplace, and he had only been on Instagram before that. And I totally get that. And he was selling his products on Instagram, which you can do. But even he found that he needed a home base to tell people about himself, if that makes sense. So the reason I'm like, yeah, I think you do, is because can you just throw your stuff on SoundCloud and send that link out? Sure. And you look just like 1,000 other schmoes on SoundCloud who send their link out. There's nothing distinctive.
I'm a SoundCloud schmo.
Now, SoundCloud is great. I use it on my websites, but if that's all you have, then there's nowhere for anybody to touch in and go, okay, who is this guy? What's he about? Or gal? Why should I be paying attention to this person? And you're not going to necessarily get that with just a playlist on SoundCloud or Disco or any of the other ones.
Gotcha. Now, is it arguable that if you have RealCrafter, which, by the way, we're going to be talking to Sam Hulick from RealCrafter coming up, so be on the lookout for that. But if you have RealCrafter or Disco, can you get by with just a URL and pointing it to that page?
All that is making the access a little bit easier. It's not changing the content that's there. So can you do that? Sure. Why would you? That's my take on it. I feel like everybody needs a home base to... It's not like you're going to start building your own production music library and people are going to buy everything off your site. And it's not that kind of business to consumer type of model. It's really a business to business model, because what you're doing as a composer with your website is telling people, and not just the public, I'm talking about people in the business, in the trade. You're telling the trade about who you are and what your specialties are and what you write and how cool you are to work with.
That's a really good point that I hadn't even considered before. You're not advertising yourself. It's a business to business. And when you think B2B, you have to assume that it's okay to cut through the fluff.
Right.
It's okay to cut through any spin or whatever.
Yeah. There's, and this veers a little bit off into social media. I don't know how you want to tackle this conversation, but really, since the beginning of COVID, especially, people are just sick and tired of being marketed to. They know all the sales pitches. They've all gone down the sales funnels where make $1 million in 12 days. And here's how you promise this and this and that. And we all know when we're being sold to. And
just the fact that we know what funnels are. Right. You know what I mean? Just the fact that we used to be kind of a unspoken secret in the marketing world, but now sales funnels and click-throughs and calls to action and all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all part of it.
You know, that stuff still works. That's why it still is out there. But it's not necessarily a secret anymore, and we know when we're being sold to. And so for me, it's always better to have a relational approach. So your website's not trying to sell you, it's just trying to introduce you.
So when it came time, for example, for me to get a website, not for davecroft.com, which you could check out, blah, blah, blah.
That's
But
from ages and ages ago.
It is, and it's
been
out
on
of
our
date,
list to redo, you know.
and it's a WordPress site, and it's a WordPress site, which is why we haven't updated it. It is such a pain in the butt to make updates to that. It looks great. I'm really happy with it. Parallax scrolling and all of that, but it is prohibitively annoying to update.
And I'm sure there's lots of people out there screaming at the screen like, you don't know what you're not. Well, maybe not. And that's
and you're right. I don't know
enough.
That's right. I don't know enough about WordPress, and I'm not in it daily, so that when I need to go back into it and update something in every 2 or 3 weeks, it's like, this makes me tired. So I'm just not going to do it. I just don't bother with it, and it goes out of date and blah, blah.
Yep.
But when it came time to go to the Production Music Association conference and the upcoming Taxi Road Rally, you made for me some business cards. And on the back of these business cards were
QR code.
Or was a QR code. And I can actually, you can pause this right now and take a picture of that with your phone. And this QR code went to a separate website that I've got pulled up here, which is, just like you said, it is a B2B website.
Right.
Little blurb about myself, some podcast clips, IMDb links, SoundCloud, YouTube, 52Qs, contact information, gratuitous, headshot with my old glasses. We need to update that. Those clear glasses look old and out of date. Some other clips, some broadcast clips, some cues by category, and some testimonials. But the entire purpose of this website is to communicate what I do, not necessarily to sell me.
Right. Exactly.
Is that right?
Yeah. And even the page has a structure, of course on mobile, it's all very vertical,
monolithic.
But on a larger iPad or, on a computer screen, it falls nicely so that your bio's on the left, your picture's on the right, good stuff in the middle, and then the logo at the bottom. So you can actually tell at a glance, if you never scroll past the first page on this on a desktop computer, you can tell who Dave is, who he works with, and you can check out his either a podcast or his IMDb page or whatever. You never have to leave this little area right here. And so that's very strategically done. Just a couple of points to take away if you guys are working on your websites. We perceive as English speakers that what is on the left is the most important. And then what is on the right is kind of supporting fluff, almost like a textbook, right?
Yeah.
And so we have the bio over there. And please, folks, edit your bios. So many, I have to go in and just rip them apart. And it's not that they're bad. It's not that they're badly written, but nobody cares that you started playing piano in kindergarten. And everybody starts with this chronological biography, right? Well, that saves all the good stuff to the end, and nobody cares that you got the second grade award for most improved flautist. Nobody cares. So what you want to do is start with your biggest, most impressive stuff first, and then you can work back into by the way, and that's kind of what we do here. Dave is composer,
professor, podcaster, YouTuber, and host.
His credits include bam, 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 bam.
And then into education, teaching experience, and then my membership, which tells a picture, of what PRO I'm with, what other associations, former member of ASCAP and the Production Music Society and Music Educators National Conference and that kind of stuff.
Right. So the idea is you take one look at this page, and even if you never scroll down, you get a sense of who this person is. And you don't have to put on there that you started playing piano in kindergarten, because if you're composing for the ABC the NFL on CBS, NCAA, and so on and so forth, you obviously know what you're doing.
Right.
You don't have to say, hey, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah. Compositional skills are baseline here.
Right.
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 Everybody at this level has basic skills. And what the idea of everything, you don't have to scroll, that is called, and correct me if I'm wrong, if this term still applies, it's about being above the fold.
Mm-hmm.
Be above, which is an old newspaper term.
Yes. Yes. And it's not as relevant as it used to be because our screens are all different sizes and so on. And you're going to see a lot of sites start over the next year or maybe two. You'll see some stuff. There's even an argument that says make sure that your stuff goes down below the fold so that people know there's more if they scroll down.
Gotcha.
What we're starting to see is actual little down arrows on the website page that says, hey, there's more down here. So there's several opposing views on that. And the reality is that we're into a time where websites are not just kind of static on the page things. They're very immersive. There's a whole new sort of avenue of cool, interesting graphics and interesting things that are going on. So yeah, the fold thing is a thing. And I chose to use that strategy on this particular website, though I don't always.
Gotcha.
Note also, just for anybody who's wondering, this is called a landing page and not an actual website page because you'll note there's no other navigation up here. You can't get back to the 52Q's website. You can't get anywhere except right here. And that's a strategy that we use because we don't want people getting distracted. We want people focused on this information and what we're wanting them to do on this page. And what we want them to do on this page is listen to Dave's music.
Yeah, and any of the other links just pop open in a new link. Like there's, my IMDb that you can check out, and the my SoundCloud, YouTube, contact information, contact, all of that.
Mm-hmm. And then as you scroll down, we have the broadcast clips. There's a number of ways that you can do these. I'm going to play one. Okay, so you can, some hosts will let you upload the videos directly. There's usually some kind of limit either on time or file size on that. So you kind of have to check in on that. What I use, I actually have a Vimeo Pro account, which I've had for years, like probably 10 years now. And Vimeo, the reason I like Vimeo for things like this, which are showcasing videos and showcasing your work, is that you can customize what the Vimeo player looks like. Gotcha. So you're not going to get the next on YouTube or watch on YouTube, and you're not going to necessarily have, the Shannon Croft Creative logo and I can customize exactly what the video player is going to look like on the page that I embed it on.
Gotcha. So if I play this video, yeah, I don't want to play too much. I don't want to get demonetized, but
right.
but yeah. So each of these clips, that works really nicely.
For me, I'm always trying to go to the most professional that I can, that I am able to reach. And for some folks, that's making a YouTube playlist, and that's the biggest.
That's fine. That's fine.
They can do, And so here's the YouTube playlist. But I want this to feel like a thing, The people who put these clips together for TV are working very hard to make a very professional product. And Dave's working very hard to make very professional music that goes with it. So I want to present something that looks like it's professionally put together and is not just going to shuffle you off to YouTube somewhere. So this is why I've embedded the videos actually on the page rather than just going, hey, go listen to this on YouTube. Right.
And so, it works really well. And then down below there, we have our cues by category. And this is, a series of SoundCloud links.
Right.
Which is great, which is fine. But I got to be honest, since coming back from the Production Music Association, I'm leaning more towards disco.
Oh, wow.
And I'll talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, playlists that I specifically put together for this page.
Right.
Specifically.
So you went in and you put together your dramatic uplifting, your dramedy, your tension and suspense. Yep. And the reasoning for that, it's all about the strategy. The reasoning is for that is when that library or fellow composer or whoever it is that's looking at the site, if they get down to this level, now you're just like the bio where you start with your biggest and best first, and then you kind of work your way into more detail. At this point, we've worked our way into more detail. We know that Dave writes for all these things. We know that he's got some really great looking clips up there. And now we're saying, and he writes these types of things.
Right.
So it's all about the strategy of what they're seeing as they move down the page.
Right. And the reason we're using SoundCloud here instead of the Squarespace player is because SoundCloud just, quite frankly, does a better job of streaming and playlists. Otherwise, it would be a sea of single MP3s,
Exactly.
and so that's one of the limitations of Squarespace.
Well, yes, and this is actually embedded into Squarespace. So when you click this, you're not going to go to a SoundCloud page. It's going to play right here on the page.
Right. So if I click on tension and suspense. You can hear all that goodness.
Yeah. So yes and no to what you just said. You can make just a row after row after row of songs from SoundCloud, but they do have this. Squarespace embraces the SoundCloud embedding feature, which you're seeing here.
Gotcha. But no, my Squarespace point is that Squarespace doesn't have a native MP3 playlist module.
Right. You can embed MP3s, not embed, you can upload MP3s and videos to Squarespace. I have found them a little bit limiting. They are branching out some of that now that they're kind of setting up membership areas, and you can sell access to video sets and stuff like that. But
my podcast clients, they who use Squarespace, they just upload the MP3 and it's no problem, but it's single at a time. So if I wanted to show, how many, there are probably 50 to 60 cues on this one page, that would just be a sea of MP3, and that would be untenable.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And then of course, if you continue to scroll down from there, we have what we call social proof. There's all kinds of proof that you want to show to people. Obviously, one is the logos that's the expertise proof, the logos of the different channels that you've written for, and having testimonials on your site of somebody you've worked with or composed something for. That's what we call social proof. There's real living people out there who have worked with you and have real living things to say about you. So you always want to include those when you can. Yep. Normally, I would prefer to see them spread out throughout the page, but because we're being super strategic about more detail, and really, look, here's what everybody's saying. So,
yeah, absolutely. This looks great. Thank you so much, and thanks for the business cards. Were stellar, and really happy with those.
I want to say something about the business cards because I get excited for you guys out there. We used to have business cards that had so much writing on the front, right? It was Dave Croft and the email address and the web page and the mailing address and the areas of expertise, blah, blah, blah. You don't need that anymore. That's why you do need a website, because now all that people want is that. You can write anything else you want on your card, because what people do is they focus. They scan the QR code, get your contact info, and throw the card away.
Or what I did, and I have all of the cards. These are all the cards I picked up and brought home from the PMA, and I'm just kind of going through them. And one of the things I like about the design that you did for me, if you'll notice, the front is blank, and the reason it's blank is so that someone, if they wanted to, and I'm going to cover up the name here, somebody could write, like they didn't have business cards on them. And come on, focus. And so I met with somebody and he wrote his information on my card and gave me the card back. And so having these are almost like little instant note cards, and I can just pass them out, write on them, and give them out.
Yep.
And so I'm gonna talk more about business cards and such a little bit later at a later podcast episode when I get on the other side of taxi, because I'm going to have a post-mortem, what I learned from taxi, from going to the road rally, and what I learned from going to the PMC.
Yeah.
The spoiler is You have to have business cards, and I'll say why in a later episode. So at the end of the day, what I'm hearing you say, and I believe you, and I agree with you, is you do need a website. You need, even if it's just a landing page, you need somewhere to communicate to anybody, to the outside world, to somebody, stumbling upon you. You need to point them somewhere beyond just a SoundCloud link or a Spotify link or something like that.
Because honestly, with the SoundCloud link, Spotify link, Disco link, YouTube playlist, you're just one of a million people who are giving out these links.
Yep.
And there's nothing to really make you stand out. And B, you're just renting that space. If SoundCloud folded tomorrow, then all of these cards you've given out with a SoundCloud link on them are now defunct. And if you take ownership of your stuff, then you don't have to worry about that.
And the cool thing about the QR code is the QR code takes us to this web page, but this web page we can change and update.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
We can change and update any time we want.
That's right.
Can you repoint this code to something else in the service we use?
It may be a feature of a level that I haven't yet subscribed to, but yeah.
Gotcha.
But it will point to this website forever. It will never change. And so as you're saying, next time you get your next Super Bowl play, we're going to pop that on there, as the sort of the lead video or whatever. Yeah. Gotcha. So it can always be updated.
Now we've been talking a lot about, the platform. We've been talking about Squarespace and other services like Wix is one I've seen that's really, really popular. But if you're not a designer, Shannon, let's say when you look at like WordPress or Squarespace, let's stay in Squarespace lane because that is our lane, and it still makes your eyes crossed. I mean, there is hope for folks, right?
Yeah,
right?
There is.
All right. Where could they go, Shannon, if
they
wanted a little bit of help? Not that we're marketing to you. Not that we're selling you anything.
We're not selling to you. I will say that sites like Squarespace, Wix has actually gotten a little harder to use recently. But you can plug and play with a site like Squarespace. Our composer, Greg Fellman, who you've had on the podcast before, had produced his site in Squarespace, and it was adequate. They had great, they have great templates if you need to start there. If you're not sure what you're doing, you can just pick out a template for music and pop your stuff in and you're good. He wanted something a little more custom, so like I said, I whipped him up some goodness. And his site is Windsand Productions.
Gotcha.
I think it's windsand.com. No, it is windsandproductions.com. And so we took it from this flat black site, which was the template, and we massaged some colors. We made some layout choices. We did some things with that. So can you get your own website going if you're not a website developer or website designer, which are two different things, by the way? Mm-hmm. Yes, you can functionally get something out there. When you're ready to go sort of to the next level or you just know there's no way, I don't know what I'm doing. Give me a call. I do specialize in working with creatives just in general. And I know the music production world very well. So it's very easy for me to go, oh, you want to showcase your music on this, this, and this? Okay, here we go. Boom, done. So it's a very fast process.
Yeah, absolutely. And so where would they go to find you?
You can find me at shannonkcreative.com. That's shannonkcreative.com.
Now, again, we're not selling you anything.
No, of course not. I just want to help out if you need help.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having someone who understands music, speaks the language, is a very accomplished musician and music director, married to a production music composer. Yeah, heck yeah. The reason that what you did with Greg resonated is because you understand the business. But that having been said, I mean, you can go to like Fiverr, you can go to like guru.com or some of these other sites.
Absolutely.
And you can find folks that can absolutely help you. Yeah. But yeah, Shannon K Creative, definitely head that out. Or if you want to brave it on your own, go to a Squarespace. get your site, maybe hit up
Yep.
Canva, and so you can do up some artwork. It literally has never been easier to kind of get, Shannon's eyes twitch. I said Canva, is that a dirty word?
No, it's not. I just was having a discussion with somebody recently about the target audience of Canva and how it's doing and all that kind of thing. Canva is a great thing. If you've never used it, again, I'm not getting commissions from any of this or anything, so you can trust me. Canva is a great resource for people who don't know a lot about design, if you'll stay with their recommendations and not go crazy on your own. Because there are, the 5 guiding principles of good design. And Canva takes those into account as they do their templates and everything. And if you don't know what those are, you might not want to mess with it.
Are you able to, or is that a different podcast?
It's probably a different podcast,
Okay.
but it
All right.
has to
We'll
do
we'll
with
have you back later. And
hierarchy and textures and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Okay. All right. We'll have you on later and give us the lowdown, or maybe you
Yes.
start your own podcast and I can come on your show.
I can
We could
talk
do
about,
that.
do you need music on your website? Ooh. I will
All right,
say
so-
I do.
go
One
ahead.
of my favorite things to do is logo work. So if you're looking for, like I did the RR Hot, that we're going to have the workshop with him next week. Of course, 52 Qs and, a legion of others.
The 52 Qs, 52
from
Qs
men's
logo.
perfume to music production websites.
Yeah, there's the RR Hot logo.
I've done furniture.
Yep. Yeah, and your own SKC, your own
yeah.
Shannon Croft Creative, which is
Mine.
awesome. Yep. You put it in the center.
Sorry. I
There
don't
we
know which
go.
way is left and right.
Yep. That's a handsome logo, my dear.
It is, isn't it?
Yes.
I do like doing logos because I like talking to people and trying to get inside their heads and what they're all about and trying to translate that graphically.
All right, so I want to off-road a little bit, and I want to talk a little bit more social media strategies. Once we've established that you need a website.
Yeah.
You need a website that has your material, business to business, blah blah blah. We don't have to retread
Right.
that ground. But what about social media? I mean, do production music composers? Let's keep that in mind, folks. That's what this entire channel is all about. Not artists. We're not artists. We are artisans. Do we need like a Twitter? Do we need a Facebook page? Do we need Instagram? Do we need to TikTok? Don't let my large sigh. Oh, are we going to have to do a TikTok? Are we?
Right now, it's the most active social media. What is this? Engagement platform by like 5% higher than the others.
But are they actually?
I don't know.
Are they actually converting to dollars? I mean, are they actually? Is someone
Okay,
who's
now
watching
there-
a TikTok of somebody like hitting themselves in the nuts with a baseball bat? Is that actually converting to real life customers?
Okay, that's a great point and something we need to stop and take a look at. There is strategy for social media, and it can be very complex if you're chasing algorithms. I choose not to do that because they change every day, and who needs to live that life? Who cares?
Amen, sister.
But being relational and not overselling, always giving content. And social media is not necessarily meant to make you money. Social media is meant to introduce you to people and create leads. And so it's a very fine distinction from what you said, but I just want to be clear that we're not, if you have physical products, yes, you can sell them on Instagram and Facebook and everywhere else. And so that would translate directly into dollars. But really what we're trying to do is grow our following so that somebody who sees you on Instagram today is a customer a year from now. So it's not always like one-to-one.
Yeah, and Instagram I can get a little bit more behind. TikTok seems so viral trendy
Yep.
that I not to mention just am I the only, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. Remember when the US government said, hey, we're banning this because they're scraping all of our privacy data?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I'm the only one who remembers that this app was banned from the app stores because they were stealing our data and selling it.
Yeah.
Am I the, and then it just went away. Yep. I don't know why.
I don't know.
Think
I don't know
TikTok
if they
changed, but
fixed something, or I really can't speak to that. I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm on board with social awareness. I mean, part of the reason that this video, I mean, we're 43 minutes or so into this interview because I know that the YouTube algorithm says that it needs to be shorter and edit, and I'm not. No, this is authentic. You know, you're going to see the cat enter in because that's life, and I'm not going to be chasing those types of trends. And so,
now, concerning the TikTok thing. The thing that I would say is the most important is not necessarily the higher engagement rate of TikTok right now. Obviously, Instagram Reels is the next one that's getting the most engagement. But you have to go where your people are. So if our composers tend to be over 30s, probably not going to find your guys on TikTok. If we were selling fidget spinners, probably would. You know, that sounded degrading, and I didn't mean it. I have one right here, and I love it.
No,
trust me. It's over there. But so more than what's getting the highest engagement rates, what's getting the highest engagement rates with your people? And then, of course, we get into the discussion about Midi Networks and why we chose to use that. And that might be a whole other thing is, you know, how do you use Midi Networks as a composition person? I don't know.
Right. Well, and that speaks to why we left Facebook because of, you know, with Facebook, it's free. You are the product, right? Because Facebook is selling your information. I have to believe that's happening with TikTok. It's also happening with Instagram. I'm not stupid. It's the same company as Facebook, Instagram is. But with Midi Networks, you know, we're not selling your information. And with 52Qs and the new community, you know, there are paid subscriptions because you are paying into it and you're receiving something back. And I didn't like the idea of digitally sharecropping, you know, onto Facebook's platform. They could change the way groups work. Who knows if you even show up in the feed? So myriad reasons why we left Facebook. And some of those issues still exist when you think about Instagram and when you think about what kind of presence you're going to have on Twitter. Like Twitter, other than mirroring whatever I post up to Instagram, Twitter is non-existent. It's so overrun with just like doom scrolling. And I know if something bad happens, Twitter's going to blow up. And personally, this may be too much commentary, but I'm sick of like users on Twitter becoming sources for news and becoming news themselves. The fact that somebody on Twitter said something shouldn't be news. Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole other thing.
Well, you know, I never did Twitter. I used it for one of my classes at Full Sail for a little while. I was just never into it. And it happens to not be where my clients' people live. My clients' people are generally on Instagram, some on Facebook, though I got to tell you, Facebook is really starting to tank in the engagement scores. I think there's lots of people who are like us are just, I'm done with this. I don't want to know what my family member thinks about the latest situation on anything. Let's not do this anymore. So engagement rates are really declining on Facebook, and they really are increasing on Instagram, especially with Reels. LinkedIn for business stuff is huge right now. They've even developed.
That's another thing I learned. I'll talk about that in the what I learned.
You know, they even are doing live sessions now, like Facebook Live was doing earlier on. So, like I said, you can look at statistics and engagement rates and all that, but the fundamental question is, where are you going to reach your people?
Yep. Let me just say how kind of I work it. Specifically as I'm building 52Qs, which is about creating community and
Right.
ultimately creating relationships.
Right.
Because there are writers that I work with today. There are publishers I work with today that I've connected through a 52Qs connection.
Right.
And so when I say that I don't chase algorithms, I mean that. I don't chase YouTube algorithms. I don't chase Instagram algorithms, because I believe that I'm going to be doing what I'm doing, what I enjoy doing, what I wished was out there, like in the YouTube space. And the folks who resonate with it, the folks that I'm looking for the universe to attract to me, will be attracted in what I'm doing, as opposed to making a bunch of videos, which I know might get me more subscribers, but isn't sustainable and has no direct impact. And I don't think anybody's going to be on TikTok watching me do a funny video and then going, I'm going to go to 52Qs and see what that's about. But I can promise you, folks have been scrolling through Instagram and seen one of your composer quote graphics. I can promise you that happens. They see, what's 52Qs about? I'm going to go sign up.
Yeah.
I firmly believe that happens. I don't know if I could say the same thing about TikTok. Not that I have any data to back it up.
I happen to be sitting in the Adobe social media thing when I texted you, so TikTok.
And I'm like, if you say we have to, I trust you. And I need to be better with Reels, Instagram Reels. I like doing them, and they do get a ton of engagement.
They do, yeah.
I'll just post a picture of me. Hey, I'm grilling up some wings today, and then boom, all this engagement.
Yep. Well, and that's something that our composers can take away from. Two things. I want to back up, and then I want to hit on what you just said. There are plenty of people out there who are selling shovels, and what we mean by that is, there's people who are going to the gold mine and trying to dig to get rich. And then there's the people who are selling them the shovels to do it with. Don't buy the shovels. There's a million programs out there that are like, how to get 10,000 followers in 10 days. They're not going to stick. I've seen it over and over and over again with my clients. I have a client with 9,000 followers on Facebook, and none of them have checked in on the site, on her Facebook page in a year or more. It's you want followers who are actually following you, and not just somebody who clicked a like button somewhere along the way. So don't waste your money. Be yourself. That's number one. And number two, I think you've already said, but just to reiterate, it's about relationships. It just is. I've never met, I didn't go with Dave to LA. I've never met any of our 52Q guys, but there are many who I've talked to in the community and are very dear to my heart, and who I know what's going on in their lives, not from a creepy stalker kind of way, but just because they're talking to me about it.
That's right.
And I love that. And that's very fulfilling for me personally. And for you as composers, in whatever way that you reach out as yourself, you're going to create a sphere around you, and the sphere of influence. And, these days, which are so weird and confusing, it's like, how can I change the world? You can't, but you can influence your own sphere in good ways and healthy ways. And that's really what you're trying to do.
And that's my social media strategy, which is making it about relationships, making it social, right? And so because relationship is the ultimate currency in this business, because we're in the entertainment business, relationship is the currency, and using social media to help further those relationships, not as a sales tool. This is me. When I go and put something on to Instagram, or when we post the composer quotes, yes, it's about awareness of 52Qs, and it's great if we can convert those and have a call to action, blah, blah, blah. But it's ultimately, these quotes are inspirational to us.
Right.
When I did a YouTube short, which is kind of like Reels, where I played this shakuhachi, and that's been one of my most popular, because people just want to see me just being real.
That was my number two thing.
Yep.
Number two, people want to see behind the scenes. They it's cool that, you're doing live streams of what you're doing, blah, 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 blah. But people love to see who you really are. And that goes back to that thing that we don't want to be sold to these days. We just want to know who you are. And if it's a match, great. And if it's not, great. Have a good life, And so as production music composers, you can do, hey, my dog's in the background while I'm composing. Isn't this funny? Just like we had Alan the cat in here earlier. Just what that real life is behind the polish and the glitz and the glamour, which we don't get a whole lot of that. But what's really behind the out front personality? What is that person really about? And people love that because we want to connect, and it's gotten even more in COVID and post-COVID era, even more of us wanting to connect that way.
Yep, absolutely. So, Shannon, thank you so much for joining us today.
You're welcome. It's always my pleasure.
Great to have you. Yes, and why don't you, if you have your socials, why don't you let us know in the comments below? Well, just drop your Instagram. This is all family here. As far as our Instagram, you can hit us up at 52Qs, and if you want to follow me on Instagram and see my grilling pictures out by the pool, it's at Dave Croft. And Shannon, yours is at Shannon Croft. Mm-hmm. And do you have an Insta for your Shannon K Creative?
No.
By the time this airs, will you have one?
Well, I probably will by the time this airs. And honestly, and this is another great thing about relationships in business, I haven't ever had to be on social media for my business because I'm pretty cool, I guess. And by the time I get done working with one client, they've already told somebody else. And so I've got the next client booked. So I haven't needed it, but I definitely would like to reach out more. And so we'll see if it's up by the time this posts or not.
Well, it's so great having you. And as always, if you ever have any questions, comments, please, again, let us know in the comments below. I do read all of those, and I make every effort to respond, even though that is getting tougher and tougher. I mean, that's a good problem to have, I think.
It's great.
But it does get tough. So Shannon, thank you very much. Once again, a huge thanks to Shannon for joining me. Always love having you on the podcast, and I look forward to having you on again really, really soon. So we're going to take a quick break, and you're actually going to hear more from Shannon because she's going to tell us all about 52Qs and how you can get involved. But when we return, we're going to be listening to Keep On Keepin' On, which is a bluesy Southern rock cue written by 52Qs community member Gar Ashby.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52Qs podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52Qs isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52Qs community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52qs.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52qs.com.
All right, that was Keep On Keepin' On by Gar Ashby. Man, I really, really, really liked this. The guitar playing is really nice, spot on. The hook is really, really good. Melodically speaking, it's all absolutely coming together. The horns were a really nice addition, to the point where I think I kind of wanted them in a little bit earlier. I felt like they could have been, I don't want to say should, but they could have been a large presence. The only thing I would say is a couple of things. There's a little hint of an identity crisis. Like when I listen to at the beginning, and this sounds kind of like a bluesy country kind of thing with that, like almost like a dobro. I don't know if that is an actual dobro, but it sounds really, there's a rural vibe to it, which I thought was really, really cool. And it's a fantastic hook. Really, really good. And then the atmosphere of the cue changes. Like this the vibe of the cue changes. And then, so I'm just punching ahead a little bit. And then we come back to it. And so the solution would be, is do we lean into that more folk acoustic-y kind of thing? And I don't mean like make everything sound acoustic, that's not what I'm saying. But should we make that a little bit more of a prominent feature instead of just an interlude? Or meaning sprinkle that sound in and use it throughout? Or do we throw that onto an electric guitar, and so it's much more of an electric blues kind of a thing instead of a folk blues, as opposed to being like on an acoustic guitar or a do. Yeah, I don't think it's an actual do. If anything, it kind of reminds me of a cigar box guitar, kind of a woody, rustic. I think that sounds a lot better. What we have here. So I would use this tone, this sound right here. Right, I can hear the acoustic layered in with it, but it doesn't feel quite so like I said, like Jekyll and Hyde a little bit. So because again, think that the music supervisor is going to hear, they're going to listen to the first 10 seconds, and they have already decided, A, they've decided if they want to listen to more, and B, if this is a fit for what they're looking for. And so within the first 10 seconds, if I were to stop, then I like, okay, all right, do I need this kind of more rural, rustic cigar box guitar vibe? Or do I need something like with horns? And so we've gone stylistically a really, really long distance. And so that would be how I would fix it, is the way that we're using the guitar layered in, the electric with the acoustic. That sounds really, really nice. And so I would use that earlier in the cue, and that's how I would start the cue. You could probably just layer in the electric on top of it from the beginning. And I would not change up feels. I would keep that hook, because the hook is what this whole thing's about. And so just like changing sounds, like the whole first half of this, I don't want to say, I'm sorry, not first half, but really the first 30 seconds has this kind of laid back, southern, almost swampy, and I can hear the acoustic in there. But once we get onto the other side of this intro spot, then the whole cue kind of kicks into a higher gear. We bring the horns in. Which I like. I like that. I just, like I said, a little bit of an identity crisis, which I think might make it difficult for music supervisors to really, really find a home. Or the editor is just going to end up cutting that out and cutting this out and start right in here and use that chunk in the middle, which is fine. That's the editor's prerogative. But what we don't want to do is turn off a music supervisor who is auditioning, song after song after song. As far as the mix goes, it probably used a little boost. I'm just guessing because I haven't loaded it into my meters. Or about 2 or 3K. It just needs a little bit of lift there. It just feels just a little. I can tell the highs are in place, but the guitars themselves could be a little brighter in the mix. Also, watch your drum quantization. And yeah, we're okay here. I don't know what I heard. Yeah, right in there. That backbeat isn't really locked in with the pocket. Speaking of, I think our snare could come up louder, and we could probably run the kick and the snare through a parallel compression so that they really, really pop. Right now, they feel the snare feels a little weak. Okay, this is really nice playing. Boom, 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 boom. And I think if we are going to go from a halftime into this kind of double time or a regular time feel, then let's let the drums really onboard that. So I'm going to back it up a little bit. Jump, 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 jump. Right, because right now it just kind of pops. Kind of smacks you in the face a little bit too hard. So I think we can onboard this energy rift. Love riding the floor tom. Love, love, love that. I think that really works. When you go to this chord, you can almost get away with going to a halftime here. Bada boom, black, 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 boom, bat, 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 bat. Maybe, and be really deliberate with that, with those drum parts there. Jump, pop, 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 pop. Yeah, really build it. Pop, 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 pop. Yeah, and then move on from there. Yeah, watch the downbeats. Make sure all of the guitars are really in line there. Right here. Yeah, that was a little squirrely. Nice, again, nice playing, man. And nice guitar stereo spread. You've double tracked and it sounds really good. The kick on the downbeat. I wouldn't drop the energy out. Yeah, and if you're going to do a fill like that, then you want to stick the landing. And at that point, I would do if we don't play the downbeat, we could do backbeats with the kick and the floor tom, or the kick and the toms. So do something like this. check out. Boom, 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 boom. See, you're. I used to play in a cover band and called the Living Daylights, and we would play like songs like this and Mustang Sally and all those types of all these types of songs. And so pull out all the tricks, man. And again, I love the horns. I think they could be more present all the way throughout. And if you're not going to bring them up, you could probably lay them out. Because again, a little bit of an identity crisis. Is this a folksy, kind of gritty, swampy, bluesy rock, southern rock, or is it a little bit more kind of Chicago horns, Earth, Wind, and Fire infused kind of rock? You know, Mustang Sally kind of. And let's give really nice button. I think we could go bump, bump, and let that last button really kind of breathe just a little bit more. Well, Gar, thank you so much for sending this along. As I have been talking about all year long, this is a cue that was sent along during our weekly feedback thread, specifically for our week 42 feedback. We provide weekly feedback threads every single week for the entire 52 Qs community, and it's absolutely free to join, and would love to have you with us. If you liked that Q review, and this is something that you want for yourself, obviously you can submit over to 52 Qs and into the weekly feedback, and you might get featured on the podcast. But I also do one-on-one video feedbacks and video coaching and Zoom coaching. And if you're wanting a review of your own cue, where I look at the music theory side of things, I'm able to bring things in, look at the loudness, and talk about arrangement, your EQ, mixing, mastering, compositionally speaking, all of those things. If that's something you're interested in, then why don't you head over to 52qs.com/coaching and check it out. We would absolutely love to help you along your creative journey. But that's going to do it for me this week. Be sure to tune in next week, where we are going to be talking about the multiple ways to stay in the creative flow. We've all been there. We've been writing, we've been composing, and then something happens where we just feel our creative energy draining, and we're like, what can we do? What can we do to stay in that creative flow state? So you definitely want to stick around and check that out next week. Now, next week I will actually be at the Taxi Road Rally in LA. So I'm looking forward to that. And the week after that, the week after I return, that is going to be Show 100, episode 100, and I'm going to be talking all about my experience with not just the Taxi Road Rally, but also the Production Music Conference. Was it worth it? Will I be going back again? What did I learn? So that is in 2 weeks, and next week we're going to be talking about staying in the creative flow state. So thank you so much for joining me, and thanks once again to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Qs. None of this at all would be possible without you. Please know that I love and appreciate all of you and all of the financial support you give to the channel. But that's going to do it for me. I hope you had a good week 42, and I hope your week 43 is going great. I know it is. How do I know it is? Because I know that the universe has great and amazing plans just for you. That's going to do it. Until next time, peace. The 52 Qs podcast is copyright 2022 Dave Croft, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the 52 Qs community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52qs.com.